Today's episode is brought to you by The Legends of Solgard.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I am your host, Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much, my man. How are you?
Doing great. I mean, how are you doing? Because, oh boy,
I'm doing all right. I mean, I'm
the
not Reddit or
Outlaws
Twitter.
are not.
I'm not Reddit or Twitter, so I don't have to overreact to 1 week. We'll get into what happened this weekend with Houston in a little bit, as well as the rest of this weekend's actions. We're looking ahead at next week as well. So Houston talk will be abound. There's no shortage of opportunities for Blevins to take his shots.
True.
So if you want that? I'm not deflecting. We've been like an hour and 45 minutes for 2 episodes running or something like that. So
That's true.
Just being a little bit of a.
We are trying to just tighten it in. What's that movie? I'm not even gonna try to think. I'm literally talking about reducing the episode, and then I was about to go off on a tangent. I'll save the tangent for later. But for now, let's do some housekeeping. Of course, this week, DB ATP coming back.
Dessert.
Tomorrow or today, if you're listening in podcast world, 7 Eastern, twitch.tv/High Noon Podcast. Got a nice show coming up for you there. Foul Play, of course, is going to be breaking down second week of Overwatch League from the fantasy side. Make sure you're checking that out, especially if you're in some of these fantasy games. They are in full swing now. I know we had a regular draft and a slow draft on a couple of the different platforms, and let me tell you, as a casual fantasy sports player, this was great because it had a lot of breakdowns. It was just an easy platform. It's something that we talked about a while ago. It's on a mobile app, and it's just like everything was just great for me. And I like the slow draft format too.
I loved the slow draft format, and I'm super into it. But it's one of those things, like, I'm super into fantasy, but fantasy Overwatch, it's going to take time to really like get embedded into the game and the people's the way people watch, the way they interact with the league and the game as a whole. And the mobile app makes it a whole lot easier.
Yes.
And mentioning all this by way of saying, if you haven't tried Draft Buff yet, do. And when you sign up, use the referral code Foul Play. That will give a little bit of kickback to Hebe and Teppo for all the hard work they're doing. So if you guys haven't tried out that platform, make sure you do, and make sure you check out Foul Play as well to get a little help with your lineups.
FOWL Play, that stands for Fantasy Overwatch League Play. If you haven't figured that out by now, definitely make sure you use that code. Give them a little bit of a kickback when signing up for that. And I mean, just a great app. Of course, we also have the Blackwatch Report. They interviewed Chu last week, who's the head coach of Envy. So keeping up with Tier 2. Again, everyone is enamored by Overwatch League right now. But guess what we're going to be talking about in mid-season? Guess what we're going to be talking about in the off-season? And what we're going to be talking about for years to come, the players playing in Tier 2 right now. So make sure you check them out on their feed, Blackwatch Report or Blackwatch Report on Twitter. And the most exciting news for me is that Deathblow actually made the VOD review video, and it low-key kind of blew up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the biggest YouTube channel, so if you do want to help get me a little exposure on the YouTube content, make sure you head over there to the High Noon Podcast page on Twitter, or not on Twitter, on YouTube, and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications as well. I'm just saying that to remember to say it in the videos.
Smash that bell!
Smash that bell for notifications. Yeah, honestly, a whole lot of fun making it, and I lucked myself into a gem. Shout outs to Beast from Toronto for providing this gem.
It was a great find, honestly.
Part of the YouTube editing process involves watching and listening to the same clip on loop 972 times, right? And so I'm sitting there and I'm like going over the part of the fight where Ben Best throws his Earth Shatter into a Transcendence and it gets wasted and it doesn't really get anything done. And I've already recorded my audio portion for it. It's already in the video, and but like in one of my last plays through of it, I just hear a how embarrassing.
How embarrassing.
That's not, I'm like, that's a deliberate sound, right?
Right.
And so looking into it, and it's the moment the manner. I mean, check out the video to hear it, but I mean, it's just some savage BM from Beast after the wasted Earth Shatter by Ben Best, just voice line spamming. It didn't get picked up on the broadcast. It didn't get picked up anywhere else, and I seem to be the one that found it and released the information into the Overwatch League Twitter sphere and Reddit verse. I think those are the correct terminologies, but
they're not. But go on.
That's fine. They're correct for boomers like me. But anyways, yeah, and so it was just a lot of fun to find that little bit of a gem. And we've talked a lot about how the replay viewers like an untapped, underutilized resource for content. And I feel like I really validated that statement straight out of the gate.
Yeah, almost immediately.
Yeah. So I was really happy to do that, and I really, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed just the reaction to it the next day, everything about it. It was just a new way to make and deliver content that I had a lot of fun with, and I think you guys can pretty safely expect to see more of it. It's going to be tough balancing around the payload and that, so I'm hoping for like every other week, ATP weeks, and then off weeks for that will be YouTube weeks. So keep an eye out for that. Please forgive me if some videos take longer than others. It was literally, they gave me the clips. You heard when they gave me access to the VODs, because we were recording when they did it.
Right.
And I went straight off the air to recording POV perspectives as soon as we stopped recording the podcast. And then I went to bed at 3:30 in the morning on Tuesday. With the video done, and finally hit the upload button to go to YouTube unpublished. And then I dropped it the next day. It's a very tight window, and I'll shrink it by getting better at the process and becoming a better video editor. But I also might have a lengthier topic I want to look at or something like that. So no schedule for them at the moment, because I just don't feel like I can honestly tell you when I'll be able to get them out. But definitely, hopefully, at least every other week. To me, I think of it like if I don't have it out by Thursday, I definitely shouldn't be putting it out. So at least by then is when I'm really, really aiming. But ideally Wednesday, like this last one, assuming I can function on that little sleep as I did that week. It was rough, but I found a way to make up some time later in the week and go from there. But yeah, super glad, and thank you so much to everybody that gave feedback, that liked, has shared it, whatever you did. Really, really appreciate it. Hope you guys liked it, and look out for more.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I did send it. I threw it in the Toronto Defiant Discord. I sent it to some folks I know at Toronto, and they said they loved it. So definitely. I mean, again, this is what I mean. I don't want to say. Actually, I do absolutely want to say I told you so. That you've been calling for the VOD reviews for so long, and the first one you do just happens to pop off. Just putting it out
I love
there.
the told you so, like it wasn't what I wanted to be doing this whole time. Like it wasn't the 82 hours of rendering he would have needed for a 520p or for like whatever 480p garbage quality.
Sometimes it just takes a little bit of a nudge to push you over the edge to do it, and sometimes that nudge just happens to be a PC that could physically do it.
I was gonna say, well, that old man that ran my had to write me a check really gave me that nudge. I appreciate it.
Oof. Moving on to not potentially incriminating evidence about ourselves, let's talk about news. We did get some we finally got some information about the canceled Chinese homestands. They're going to be played over multiple days in weeks 6 and 7 in a studio in Seoul. A few of the makeup matches will be added to the Seoul Dynasty homestand in week 5. The makeup matches will not affect other scheduled homestands in Washington in week 5. Florida in week 6, and Atlanta in week 7. So again, I mean, we don't really need to go too deep into it because we talked about it on multiple episodes now. Unfortunate situation from obviously a world thing with coronavirus and whatnot, but again, the league taking decisive and really just the only real option here in canceling the homestands in China and finding it seems here like a pretty non-messy way to get these games actually played. So kudos to the league and kudos to everyone who helped make this possible. And I personally feel bad for the Chinese fans that were looking forward to watching Overwatch at the homestands. I know I would be super bummed if this happened in Toronto, but again, it's just an unavoidable thing. You can't do it. So
yeah, and I mean, it was a potentially very messy situation, and I think it would be wrong not to give a kudos to the Overwatch League and their logistics department.
Right.
If they can successfully get these matches rescheduled, played within a 3-week time frame, still in the front half of the schedule,
right.
Like by the time week 7 ends, it'll be like there was nothing canceled, and we'll just be into things. And to have gotten everything figured out, lined up, squared away, teams to agree. I mean, think about every team needs to agree to it. All the players need to, I mean, to a certain extent, maybe not every player has to be okay with it, but the teams had to sign off on the plan. They had to get the venue. They had to, everything needed to work out. And I mean, everybody was working together, I'm sure, to make that happen. But even when that's the case, intentions aren't always enough. So, I mean, assuming everything goes off without a hitch, we still don't have specific matches or, dates and times for any of the actual matches. We just know what weeks they'll be played in. And look for some more specific announcements coming about that soon. But yeah, just take a minute props to Overwatch League, assuming things go as planned here. And even if it goes a little off plan and there's something in week 8, who cares, right? It's just seems to be being handled very well and professionally with as little disruption as possible, and getting all the disruption over with, right? It could have dragged on, which I personally thought it would.
That we'd have a weird extra week or something like that.
Yeah, at the end of the season, even in the last weekend, right? We're still doing makeups from week 2 and week 1 and stuff like that, which is fine, but this is better. And so just taking a moment to congratulate them preemptively, I guess, for getting it all squared away. And it, to me, it's a boost for the league. Can it work? Can they pull it off? And if they can get through this seemingly fluidly and issue free, then I think we have to take a moment to recognize that, this seems like the worst case scenario from a scheduling department, and no problems. So fingers crossed it stays that way, but it seems to be being done and handled perfectly so far.
Yeah, the only thing I'm wondering about, and we won't even go into it because it's just conjecture, or not even conjecture, just speculation, is I'm wondering what the sort of negative impacts for specifically the Chinese teams is. Did they have to refund a bunch? I'm sure they did have to refund a bunch of tickets. I'm sure they had to, refund venue space. But again, this is a literally humanitarian crisis that's going on. I'm sure that Overwatch League matches are probably the last thing on their mind.
They were probably going to take a hit from that anyways. And they would have taken a hit from their venues being empty while they were trying to host, because nobody wanted to go into a public place and contract the virus.
It was never going to be. It was never going to be like they should play them anyways. It was
absolutely.
What is the impact of this unavoidable bad thing?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch and see. Because if it can be minimalized or marginalized and lessened, then I think that'll help maybe when they want to expand further, help owners feel comfortable buying in, things like that. So
providing the orgs buffer and at the end of the day reducing risk from them financially, or levying that sort of impact financially, is going to be a good thing for the league overall. Other piece of news here is that Ado has joined the Hangzhou Spark. Death, what do you think about this addition to the Spark?
If you'd asked me this before week 1 had started, I wouldn't have been super pumped about it. But Ado's a player that really had moments. Like he found opportunities to pop off and look really good on the 0-40 Shanghai team of season 1.
True.
He didn't look great last year on Brig in Washington, but how many players that we've seen over the first couple of weeks either didn't play or played and were mediocre at best last season, given the need to play off role, things like that. How many of them are succeeding? I mean, does anybody still have doubts about Carpe's ability to pop off and be clutch? I don't think so. So to me, I want to see all these guys that popped at times season 1, you know, that looked good in the past on these heroes. And so I think this is a great signing for the Spark, a player that is going to be used to a lot of the challenges that new players might be subject to as they come in the league if this was a fresh face call up. And I think the skill is there, right? Like the guy got signed to 2 teams for a reason,
right?
In the past, and he didn't get to show it last year. And I'm glad Hangzhou brought him. It sounds like they trialed him for a couple months, even. So they know what they're getting, and I trust they can use him. And until we hear what's going on with Crystal and when he's back, it fits a position of need for the team. So thumbs up all around here. I think it's a really, really strong signing.
Yeah, and as someone who has gone a season, I mean, granted, in like, I think it was middle school, so 8th grade basketball, we had a winless season. It teaches you something and like deadens losing to you when you play on a bad team. It helps you as a good team to have been on a bad team before. When you're on a good team, every single loss hurts. It feels like I mean, granted, I honestly, I was closer to the Overwatch League players' ages at that point than I am now. So, similar mindset of like every loss hurts and feels like a personal defeat when you're on top of the world and you're winning every match. I mean, we saw it literally play out on Moth's face. Like there's that moment in time that will go on forever in Overwatch League and in esports. That look of they were off the point and they lost the match because of it on Moth's face. When you've lost 40, when you have been literally the most losing team in professional sports history, you know, losing a game week to week isn't going to be that big of not that it's not going to have no impact on you. It's going to bounce off of you, like, you know, like
it keeps you from the low lows, right? They talk about managing the peaks, valleys, right? Yes. They're talking about the high highs of the most hype moment. OGE at the homestand last season, and then needing to take a break afterwards. And the low lows, what's Houston feeling right now? What is, you know, what, like being able to rally from that, you know, a situation can spiral, and having a player that can, hey guys, we lost a game, big whip, we've got another one, like we go again. Like having somebody that can break you out of that funk when you start to hit those slumps and those slow spots can potentially be huge. So yeah, I mean, you start to wonder too, has he been on all these losing teams for a reason? But in his case, I think it's safe to say at least he wasn't the biggest problem on Shanghai, and he was doing somebody else's job on Washington. So I'm glad he got another shot for sure.
Definitely look forward to seeing some more Ado in the Overwatch League. But let's move on here to
It's Tournament Talk.
We had the baby week this week, only 4 matches being played at the Philadelphia homestand, the Battle of Brotherly Love, which I think overall, I mean, can we, before we get into it, can we talk about how the technical stuff, because people are bringing it up, and I, you know, obviously watching the matches, you see it. There's some, you know, some wonky transitions or whatever. There's a bunch. It seemed like there was a lot of like, especially in the Houston match, was it Houston Philly or Houston? Was it Houston? It was Houston
didn't play Philly. So.
Sorry, Houston, Florida. I meant. Yeah, Houston, Florida match. It seemed like there was like a bunch of pauses and like technical stuff and whatever. But
the pauses are what we're talking about. Okay.
The pauses and then also like just cutting the weird YouTube ads in the middle of content, and like it's sloppy.
So I didn't see the cutting to ads or anything this week. As far as I know, the big issue was there was some dead air as we went from Watchpoint, like as they transitioned from the desk in LA to Philly. That I definitely felt. I was able to just go to the MLG stream and pick it up with no problems once it was apparent that it was going to last any amount of time. So I think if you're a savvy watcher, you can protect yourself from that. Now, obviously, you still don't want it to happen, right? It's still bad for the league, et cetera. At the end of the day, what did we expect, right? Like, how many different production teams are there now? Now they're traveling, they're in a completely different setup, a different room, different network. There was going to be problems, and to me, this comes back to how much would a preseason have helped, going somewhere. So that's something that I think that's tangible that can really come out of these production issues. But when you're talking about going into week 3 and they're still happening, I mean, you can rule out that it would have completely kept them away, but the big one, like the crunch time meme wouldn't be a thing, because that would have been in one broadcast figured out. And I don't know, they're going to continue the pauses, things like that. Those happened at the LA arena, at the Blizzard arena, right? That's just, we're playing video games and we want the players to not be playing with input lag that's extra. We want them to have their audio. There's no alternative to that. We don't know even what happened, right? It could have been faulty player equipment and not the fault of anybody, just something that's going to happen from time to time. Doesn't really bother me, to be honest, right? Even the one that was long enough that it should have been a problem, this is like last year, like one of the last games of this season, or like a homestand or something, where it was just comical how long it was taking to play the last 5 minutes of the match. But that just became fun in its own right. And we just kind of like had some fun with it there. So to me, they're going to happen, they're going to continue, and they're going to diminish over time. And that's all you can expect. It was something that was going to come from this. Different venues have different network qualities, just there's so many variables thrown into it. Maybe it's me as an IT guy just being able to see the challenges that they're facing, right? And knowing a little bit more about it, that makes me not super surprised. Nobody's happy with it, I'll guarantee you that. And as long as they're working to make improvements, and teams I think will eventually start to like narrow in on one venue in their city when they know what they can expect for turnout, and that's going to help. But right now it's just these are growing pains, and there's not a whole lot to be done about them. And to me, other than the ad rolls over top of footage, which is inexcusable, the rest of it is fine. I'm still really enjoying myself watching it. It doesn't, in the Houston match, the maybe one pause too many, to the point where it was like, okay, this is kind of annoying. But like I said, at the end of the day, you need, the players need to be, using equipment that's working. They need to be able to hear comms, and the rest has to get figured out after the fact. And there's no two ways around it. So I was overall fine with it, as long as the big stuff, the actual cutting to the studio so that people can see the intros and get introduced to the venues, that's important. You shouldn't be missing that. So maybe they should have paused it instead of going on and then cutting in when they got it back. But that's hard to coordinate when one desk is in LA and the other one's in Philly. So yeah, I don't know. We'll get it figured out. To me, nothing that happened this weekend was over the top, or to me, honestly, like bears much conversation. But when it follows up the issues that were there week 1, I get people wanting to talk about it.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think it's less the like, oh well, they had the pauses. It seemed like there was a bunch to me, but that's not even really an issue. It's more like, what did they have? Like, they had the same, like, it was the ad thing with YouTube and changing. Like the YouTube ads and crunch time and that meme, like, and that seemed, it didn't even seem like, it just seemed like it was sloppy, which is
that's the one that was, like I said, inexcusable. It was unprofessional, bad, I think, except for Cheez-Its. So yeah, I mean, that's the one that's completely indefensible, but all you can do is make a meme out of it like they've done and just roll with it, right?
For sure.
There's gonna be issues, and to be honest, people talk about it like, oh, well, if we want to be traditional sports, like, sit down and watch enough traditional sports and you see this stuff happen too. It's not
right.
It seems good, it seems like it's something that doesn't happen because in the NFL
decades
there's
extra
16 games going, right? There's all these established things, so it's less frequent, but certainly does occur because there's just some amount of elements that are outside of any production team's ability to control.
That's true. Yeah, that is that. Okay, let's actually talk about the matches here. We start off Florida Mayhem beating the Houston Outlaws 3-0.
Yep.
The hometown Philly Fusion winning their first home game 3-1 versus the Washington Justice. The Washington Justice coming back on day 2 and defeating the Houston Outlaws 3-0, and Philly defending their turf wins 3-0 versus the Florida Mayhem. DB, there's a big green elephant in the room right now, and it looks like a 0 in the win column, in the map win column for Houston. What is your defense here?
Well, I mean, I don't have one for the first 2.5 maps of Houston, right? There isn't one. They played a terrible composition that gave them about a 0% chance to succeed, if my math checks out. For a couple of reasons, right? They were playing the Brig Lucio healer pairing in what was otherwise a fairly meta composition, right? I think it was Ryan Diva with May and McCree. And that's fine. You can pull that comp off in specific situations. And the King of the Hill map was one where I don't mind that they tried it. What I mind is that it horribly didn't work and they didn't try anything else, right? Like with one fight left, you don't switch to something to try to get the point, see what you can do. We see stuff like that work all the time. We see, maybe not with a high percentage, but rolling the same thing out that's getting, just getting stomped has a much lower percentage chance of working. So that was disappointing to see, but I will say I kind of called it. Week 1, they try some things, they play some people maybe they shouldn't, they do some things maybe they shouldn't, and week 1, match 1 is the time to do it.
Sure.
So to me, the problem wasn't that they tried it. The composition to me is a really good counter pick. If somebody was diving me, if I was Paris facing Toronto on Horizon Lunar Colony doing the dive defense, I might go to what Houston played because that dive comp's going to come to you. It's going to bring the fight to you. So the Brig is swinging and doing work that way and being active in the fight. What they tried to run it into was like Widowmaker, who's shooting you from a distance before your Brig can start left clicking.
Brig's not super great against Widowmaker, by the way.
Right. And you saw it work out on the defense on Havana for Houston. And why is that? Because the offense has to come to you. You can wait around a corner, you can aggress on them. And to be honest, it worked great there. They full held. So it wasn't all bad for Houston. It was just they lost, right? And that was the crux of it. Now the other 2 maps weren't particularly close. They did, I think, for Eichenwald finally switch, but they'd already let like half of the attack go before they did, and so they were really behind the 8 ball even in the map as well as the match from that bad composition before they finally switched. So it's just a really interesting decision there. But last year at the same time, I'm like, I don't beat them up terribly for this because last year we were mad at them for playing the meta when something fit them, and you know what I mean, when there was clearly something to them just playing DPS forehead. So if scrim results showed that this worked for them a little bit and that they had some success with it, I have no problems with them trying it in their first game. Because in the world where they're right, and then the whole rest of the league is, oh my God, they beat these 2 teams, and whatever, they crushed them, and so they thought they'd figured something out. They tried it, they gave it a serious try. So the first match, I kind of threw out as something I I picked Florida to win.
True.
You know, and I called that there was going to be some questionable player choices, maybe some weird comps, something. So it wasn't a big surprise to me. I would have liked it to have been closer. But otherwise, at the end of the day, that wasn't a big deal. A big takeaway there was the hydration Blase DPS duo. But given the circumstances of the match, given that I thought they were really set up to fail, no matter what, I wasn't judging those two on their performances because I didn't think they had any chance to actually do anything good there.
That and the fact that Linkser did tweet out that a bunch of people were sick on the Outlaws team, so that also throws another.
Yeah, I was definitely going to get to that. And they talked about it a little bit. They were asked about it, you know, and the team didn't put this out as an excuse. Linkser tweeted it or whatever, but the players are going to talk about what's going on in their lives. It's not, that's not anything, but that kind of forced people to really ask the question, what was going on? And I guess Jexe woke up the night of like Sunday morning, like just covered in like cold sweats, and just he was just a mess, like a zombie, barely on your feet. Apparently Raucus was super sick, and hydration in the interview that I watched in the press conference that I saw on YouTube, he said like 3 words, and it was like, yeah, probably Paris. He coughed like 7 times, and they Flame literally said, I mean, hydration's one of the healthier ones in the thing,
right?
So they're not using it as an excuse, but it might have been a contributing factor. I think also, you know, that on top of the new shot calling. And to me, I guess that brings me right to what was my big problem on the weekend. Obviously, there's no positive takeaways here from Houston. But my big problem was, I said last episode, what I wanted to see more than anything was than wins was show me decisiveness, show me the impact of Jexe being there, being the shot caller for the team now. And that I didn't see. If they were more aggressive, their comp in the first match would have been a little more successful. If they were more decisive and took fights faster and maybe just ran over people. That's what that comp needs to do to succeed. It was never going to work on Havana against a sniper when you need to walk down a huge hallway, but at least other times, you know, you could have had a close match, I think, even playing what was probably a suboptimal comp. So everybody reacts to illness differently. There's been a lot of talk about it. We'll find out soon, right? I mean, you don't necessarily get over the flu in a week, but they're active again right away. So they've got to get it figured out. They've got to get healthy. They've got to get to Washington as well. So it's a early, obviously, you know, kick in the gut, I think, for the team and the fan base who wanted to see that hot start. But there were no slouches this weekend either, right? Like they played against 2 quality opponents, and I talked about a slow start for this team. Some of them also have new head coaches, but this coach is coming in and I think really putting in a new system, and they're a unique combination of like a lot of player changes and a new coach. And you know, Philly's a little bit there, but when they bench Fury and don't play him, you get and you just go with Poco again. Like that's 1 player down. That's not different, and maybe they were able to capitalize on that a little better. I think there's also just more talent in Philly, raw talent in Philly, anyways. But yeah, I don't know. No, obviously nothing positive here from the weekend, but I'm sorry to disappoint, you know, Twitter and Discord.
We wanted you to be more upset.
I'm not distraught. I can still, you know, feed and clothe myself and sleep at night. It is what it is. It's
unlike
a rough
if New York
start.
Would have lost in week 1, where I wouldn't be able to.
Well, teams in very different situations as well.
And also at home on the opening week.
right. So yeah, it was not the start you want. But it's 1 week in a long season. It's not that long of a season, but in week 1, you're, you know, after your first week of games, you can still say that, I think. So as long as they get it figured out, if they come out next week and beat Boston and maybe go to 4 or 5 maps against New York, I think they'll flip the script and we'll be looking at how did they get so much better, and okay, what is this team? And that's now at the end of the day, I don't think that's going to happen unless Linkser goes in for Blase and preferably Dante goes in for hydration as well. It's concerning to me that those 2 players who seem to be stars in the role, Dante's May was one of the bright spots for that team last year,
Right.
and Linkser's tailor-made to play the
Widow,
McCree role. And when you think about what swaps teams are making, the successful teams are making in this meta, you can see teams going to the Tracer and you see teams going to the Widowmaker.
Yep.
And those are still Dante and Linkser territory.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So they seem to me like the no-brainer DPS pairing. Maybe they played because of illness. Linkser said it wasn't because he was sick. I don't know if that's why, hydration was in over Dante. Really couldn't tell you. We'll never know, I think, the answer to that question, because there's no requirement for them to answer us.
Right.
But to me, a new head coach can try things and not work out. He can do that early. But when the fancy new thing you try doesn't work, you need to go back to what is safe and what does work, and at least see how that goes. If they bring Linkser in and it doesn't work out, and they think, okay, well, Blase is just, if we're not working anyways, let's go with the guy that we need to integrate. That's fine. But to me, I think it can work with Linkser. And I even said in my prediction, the one I picked them to win, I'm like, just show me Linkser for 4 maps popping off on McCree, and this is what I think will happen. And we didn't get that. So, I didn't judge Blase and Hydration in the first match. I did on the second match, and they did not live up. Put aces in your places, please, Coach Harsha. That's what the team needs. Maybe that wasn't an option due to illness. We don't know. But at the end of the day, no excuses. You put the performance that you put out there, and now they need to live with it. I did like the reaction from the team. Like Harsha after the first one, mistakes were mine. We'll be back next. Tomorrow it'll look better. I promise. It did look better. They're not pulling any punches. He didn't kai out. Those are things that are important to know from a head coach. And so failed one test, passed another. And I don't know. Nobody's season or career is made on 1 week. That's just the beauty of overreacting to the small sample size we have. We were itching all season to see these teams. We were arguing about power rankings, and yours is stupid. No, mine's stupid. And it's just the way it goes. And now we're trying to justify it. Now we're trying to justify everything and make things fit. And in reality, it's just going to play out over the next 2 months, and that's when we'll have our clear picture. So. How do they react? That tells us a lot. It's Boston, people are calling it the battle for the cellar, and that's accurate at the moment, right? Although I'd hold London up to either of the 2 performances from Boston or Houston at the same time. But so pass that test and move forward. That's all they can do.
Yeah, I'm more curious because we saw with Philly this week, we saw the rebirth of Carpe, just as strong as he ever was, popped off just like he always used to. We talked about it being sort of a toss-up, but we also talked about this squad being built around Carpe again. They invested in Carpe. They're showing off Carpe. Houston, it's like you said, seems kind of tailor-made for a Dante Linkser meta.
Yeah, it seems right.
Didn't show it. No. So that makes me think immediately coaching. But again, small sample size, so I'm not trying to. I don't care one way or the other. I'm not trying. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus. When Houston's not playing against Toronto or New York, I generally root for them. Yeah. They're in the top half of my favorite teams, except when it makes you happy that they win, so then I have to root against them. But they are they're certainly above Dallas in my book. Screw Dallas, by the way. But there's a lot of moving parts here, right? New players, new coaching, obviously new environment, and the sickness doesn't help in evaluating because it's they didn't put it up from their end as an excuse, but at the end of the day, it is still a factor that affected things.
Sure.
So it's at the end of the day, it's just we want more concrete stuff, which we're never going to get in 1 week, and then there's also other factors as well. The one thing that I'll end the Houston talk with for the last week is that the filthy traitor Mecco hasn't gotten a single win on a non-New York team, so screw him. Good riddance. But the other team we'll talk about from this past week, since we're not going to be talking about them in the next week, is Florida, and they had an interesting week. I mean, obviously they started off better than they ever have by getting a win in the first game against as we just talked about, a pretty bad looking Houston. But getting that first win is huge. They did make some interesting choices with their players, with their starters, but they showed the ability to win against the team that they should win against, which we've talked about for literally years now. That is the hallmark of a placement in a power ranking, or where a team stands, is, are you able to beat the teams you're supposed to? Not spiking a win against New York, not spiking a win against the Shock. It's Houston is on the downtrodden. We're Florida Mayhem. Are we able to get the job done? Yes. That is a placement for me. Even if it's not against a full-strength Houston, it's saying something about Florida Mayhem to me. What did you think about Florida's week overall, Death?
I think it was a solid start for them. I think you hit a lot of points. And to me, you say against maybe not a full-strength Houston, I don't think it was a full-strength Florida. They played Carry On over Fate. I don't think that's correct. Carry On was solid. I don't think the guy is a bad player. I don't know him well enough to really judge him. This is some of the first we've really gotten to see him. I do hope you have the Wayward Son drop.
Oh, it already played.
Okay, excellent. So I'm really interested to see how that works out. I think Fate would be a better choice, but we'll see. I think we're probably going to see Carry On for a little while before that happens. They did play both of them on a King of the Hill map, so that they could pull off double shield, but even that I think is a mistake. When you want to play the double shield, do it with your off tank so you have some ability to switch, so the other team just doesn't lock in the Symmetra and then you lose because you can't switch off of it because neither of your guys can go to the Diva or anything. So I don't know. BQB over Saya player is another one. What I'll say there is BQB looked really good, where Carry On looked at least iffy at times. So it's tough to say what the correct choices are here from Florida. I've seen nothing from Saya player to make me think he's dropped off. Throwing him in for one map here and there, which they did, he may not have popped off like crazy in those, but that's again not the best situation in the world. Some players really are momentum based, so when you throw them in cold like that, by the time they get heated up, you're taking them out again. So this is a little bit the Linkser versus Blase conversation, but if Blase played better, Saya feels tailor-made for what this meta is. He feels like one of the best players in the league at that role. Even if BQB is playing pretty good and popping off, I question whether or not they'd get more. They'd get just solo, standout, pop-off carry performances from Saya player, because we saw those from him before.
Right.
So I'd like to see him back in there. But for right now, things are going okay. And I think we're going to see them hold course for a little while, and when they're not active this weekend, but they will be again soon.
Yeah, a lot of hopes if you're a Florida Mayhem fan. I mean, getting that first win is big. They may still be near the bottom, but they have the talent. They've got options, which is something they haven't had in the past. They have the full stack of talent, which they arguably may not have had at points in the past. They've got awesome looking jerseys, which is great. They've got some they have homestands where they're going to be able to get some some extra win percentage points. Even, take it for what it's worth. It's going to be something to have a home crowd there. Didn't help Dallas last week, but got to throw that shade when you can. But yeah, as the long time, like, Florida is always my fourth favorite team. Fourth
favorite.
It's pretty good in a field of 20. Top 20%. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. I mean, Philly looked really good, and we'll talk about them. We'll actually transition into talking about them as we. Philly looked really good this weekend, and Florida, while they didn't get a map against Philly, they looked all right against them. It wasn't an absolute domination. It was an all right placement. And Death. I mean, we've been critical of Sato, and
Absolutely.
he kind of shut
Right.
us up a little bit.
Rightfully so, we've been critical of
Sure,
Sato.
sure.
I'm not backing off even a little bit on the garbage performances he put out in
Certainly.
the early first 2 years.
Sure.
I know a lot of people were framing it like, all the haters were wrong or you're proving them wrong. I don't hate Sato. I hate seeing a team full of wasted talent just losing because one player just isn't addressed on the roster.
And we also kind of hated him because he wasn't fraggy, but that has
Well,
nothing to do with the game.
We gave him a hard time because he wasn't, but we really didn't hate him for
True.
That's true. So perfectly happy to see the guy have the kind of performance he had this weekend.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, I said this about Mecco last week, and I went back and did my research in the VOD reviewer. I did it on stream too, by the way, so you can watch the Twitch channel for VOD review streams of me just watching and trying to record specific things or whatever. But it was that I thought a lot of his big plays were set up by his own mistakes. I said that of Hotba last week, and didn't turn out to be true. The mistakes were more "Who are you?" and mono based, and then he kind of pulled him out. And I'll do the same with Sato and go back and try to confirm him. But even the big 5K he had on Temple of Anubis, the clip is him dying first thing, right? And so he comes back and two more people on his team has died, and he's able to get 5 kills while his team's down 2. Because he put him in that situation. Right now, same thing with Hotba. When you're making the plays and you're making up for it, great, it's fine. It's not actually a problem. How sustainable is that, though, is my question. And that's going to be the issue for Sato here. We've seen good weekends from him in the past, and we've called him out, we've pointed him out, played pretty well, didn't kill him, whatever. This was his best performance, and I don't think it was particularly close. He really did make some plays, win some fights, and did the thing himself in some situations. But you can't talk about this team without getting to Carpe very, very fast, right? And I thought Ivy was another one, did very, very well for his team. We did not expect him to come in.
Defiant player.
Always. As soon as he left Toronto, they popped off. They completely fell off. Right? They were 5-2 with them, and 2 and whatever without him.
2 and too many.
2 and too many is correct. So maybe we shouldn't have been surprised to see him step in, play this well, overtake EQO's spot. Whatever actually happened, we'll see in time. But there was a lot of help for Sato in this game. Alarm looked really good in his debut. Personally, maybe not quite what was promised, but first weekend, all those factors that everybody's dealing with, they're amplified on these rookies. So, and more than well enough that it's not a criticism either. It's just I do hope I get to see a little bit more than I saw, because I think there's better in him.
Well, there's also and this happens in traditional sports too. It's very rare that you have a rookie come in and be dominant, right? You usually have it can happen in
generally speaking,
like LeBron came in and was just very good immediately. Kobe at the time also came in and was just an amazing player immediately. But even that, they're not at their peak in the rookie year, right? You have good rookies. You have some rookies that are very good, but a lot of times a rookie comes in, and if a rookie is even playing, if you think about it, a rookie took someone who played before's spot.
Yeah.
So they are good. They are very good. They're not going to be what they were in Contenders, right? Because unless you are a full, and I mean, I don't think really anyone believes this. But if you are a full-blown, Contenders is better than Overwatch League in terms of player talent, A, that's just dumb. But B, it's not going to happen. So you're going to be at a lower level, and obviously when you are playing at a higher level, you're not going to be as dominant as they were before. So yeah, I think just playing as a rookie is a big thing. That is a huge win, obviously, for them and for the team if it's an upgrade. And B, showing any amount of success and being good in any way is definitely going to be a mark of a truly good player, because they've got time to grow. They've got time to peak. They can get better over the years and over the season. So, yeah, I mean, Alarm wasn't as pop off as he was in Contenders, but man, if he was, we'd be probably, singing the Alarm song for a while, raising the alarm, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely correct there. And one last thing to note on Philly before we move on. Fury didn't play, so there might be more upside to this team. Right now, they won the stiffest of competition this weekend. This is it was a bunch of middle pack teams they had to go against, and at least perceived middle of pack teams.
I was gonna say.
We don't know. We just don't know how accurate that is. But we did have them kind of the front runners of the 4 that were playing this weekend, and so it was important that they get the 2-0 and at least stabilize that. I'll be curious to see what they look like against maybe still guess San Francisco. I think is pretty obvious, but assuming Vancouver is what they are, the resurgence of Bird Ring might really make the Gladiators very, very relevant. So I want to see them go against some of the more established top end talent. And we'll see New York right out of the gate. So I think that's going to be a really good
we're actually going to see
good test.
And we'll talk about those matches in a second, but we are moving to the Washington Justice homestand. So let's talk about Washington first. They are playing against Paris and London this week. We'll start with Paris. We've seen all of these teams this week play already. Yes, we've seen all of these teams play at least one match at a homestand across the past 2 weeks. Washington versus Paris. Of course, Washington played this past week. Paris in week 1 in New York. Yes, in New York. Who do you have here, Def? What's your read on the Washington versus Paris match?
This one is to me going to be really, really. Paris is a team that they're getting handbent for the first time. Obviously, they only had the 1 weekend without him, but he should be there this weekend. And if he's not playing, it's not because of an age restriction. So they're going to unlock a bit and come out of their forced double shield shell that they were living in for a little while. So I'm definitely excited to see that. It's funny too. We're getting some of these stats and we're looking at them, and I'm still learning to pull them. So my apologies if this isn't all 100% accurate. But a lot of the DPS players here in this matchup are at the top of these lists. Number 1 in final blows per 10 minutes is XZ at 10.9. The next closest is 9.5. Eliminations, XZ's number 2. Hero damage, he's number 1. Solo kills, he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he's really did so much work in that opening weekend, and I really, really want to see him continue that. And now if they're getting an off tank, I really think Paris is a team that went from I'm assuming they're bad until they show me otherwise to okay, like that was such a performance from the rookie and XZ, and now we've heard good things about Hanbin, and I think Hanbin might even be from the same team as XZ. So like they're just, I love where Paris is at, and I don't want to either. So just to be clear, they're just seem to be built correctly, and it seems to be coming together for them. So I'm really excited to see what they can do against the hometown crowd, the team that's there. Got the entire arena behind them. But I mean, shout outs, the solo kills per 10 minutes leader is Corey. So it's not just XZ that's at the top of these lists. Final blows, he's a little farther down, still top 10. He is number 3 in damage per 10 minutes. Corey is. So eliminations, got Elevote pretty high up there as well. I think Roar looked really, really good for Washington on the tank spot. So 2 teams that just have a lot going for them right now. Corey did well. I mean, I'm talking about how good his stats are and how good his numbers are. I want to see him get a little better on the McCree. Maybe it was just occasionally that he would like potato out a bit and miss some shots, and the camera caught it at the wrong time. It's another player I'll be looking at.
There's a VOD review for you.
Yeah, there won't be one this week, but a part of what I want to do is it's not all going to be VOD. stuff. Just a quick aside. Some of it's going to be like, is what we're seeing about this player correct? They might look
is
in
the narrative. That's
right.
Yeah,
I really want
to
focus on like narrative busting. I think with some of the ones that aren't straight VOD reviews.
Overwatch League Mythbusters name idea. You heard it here first.
Absolutely. So, Corey's one to really look at and see how did he do in that McCree role? Is there, does he compete with the absolute best in the league?
Right.
Obviously, he's adequate at it. It's rare to find a Widowmaker that can't play the McCree at least passably well. But is he as good on that hero as he is on Widowmaker is the question. So far, the numbers suggest he might be. My eyes said maybe not quite as good as his Widowmaker, but time will tell. We'll see. It was everybody's first week this week, so there's lots of rust, and when the numbers show such a good performance, you've got to trust them for at least for the time being. Give the benefit of the doubt. So yeah. Aim God number 2 in the healing pretend list. So yeah, a lot of players in this match are well represented in the rate ranks section of the stats lab. So make sure you look into those to get an idea of who's going against who we're really trying to see, because there's a lot going on in this match. It's a very, very big placement match for me. I'm going to go against the crowd here and go with Paris 3-2. There's just the eyeball test is what I'm going with. Right on paper, these guys are right there. If Sparkle was here, I'd go Paris 3-0, because I'm just that enamored by what they were able to do with honestly, like their hands were tied behind their back, Paris was, in the double shield, and they still looked as good as they did. So I think as that unlocks and they're able to play the meta a little bit more and be less stuck and less solvable by the opponent, I think they just only continue to get better and better. So narrow victory here for Paris. But yeah, I'll go 3-2. Who do you got, Liz?
I'm agreeing with a lot of what you're saying. I do think I just have a different opinion on what's going to happen with the changes. I don't think we've seen new talent come in yet in this season. Granted, again, very small sample size, but we have not seen people come onto the stage new in these homestands in season 3 and immediately turn on. I mean, we saw Carpe do great things, but he's also a veteran of 2 years. We're bringing in new players into Paris. I do think if this is 3 weeks out, I'm flipping this, but I'm going with Washington 3-2. I do think that Paris probably has a bigger upside in the season as a whole. I'm not picking it this week. That paired with the hometown crowd, I do think it's really close. I cannot right now pick against the home crowd if I have it as a 3-2. Give me Washington 3-2 here, which does mean
the only objection I have to what you said is that Paris is the exception. They're the ones that had the rookie step in and pop off, but they're it's a couple weeks, it's different. There's changes, all those things.
The more
and
new
I got
things,
a 3-2 as well, so it's far from crazy to go the other direction.
Which does mean we need to consult our good friend, the Coin, everyone's second favorite host.
Oh, it is Tails. We didn't say who was heads and tails. So we're rusty. The coin needed a preseason.
There was. We got the kinks out. That coin flip was brought to you by Legends of Soulguard, by the way.
Soulguard coin flip. So now, tails never fails. I picked Paris. Paris is tails.
Sure. God, that sounded like it hurt.
It did. And tails again. So,
all right. So rigged coin.
Weighted coin.
Rigged coin.
Hashtag weighted coin. Yep.
Okay. So the coin does pick Paris here. Let that, I would say, absolutely let that dictate your decision, because the coin does not lie.
It has no bias.
The only bias it has is gravity.
And the weight we talked about. But anyways, pay no attention to the weighted coin.
Technically, what you're talking about is the mass, the weight factors in. Never mind. God,
I hate you.
I hate myself. Washington versus London is the next one here, and I think we've got a little bit more. I don't think we're going to be needing to bring out the coin here. London is still not looking great. I think they looked a touch better than we thought that they looked a touch better than we predicted them being coming into week 1. but I mean a hair. They did take a map against New York, which is nothing to sneeze at. I do think that there are other factors that don't include player skill and team cohesion that impact that first map of the first game of a new season on stage in a crowd that you're not used to at all. So I'm not necessarily giving too much credence to that, but they did perform a little bit better. That being said, it is a hair. Washington, for all the reasons that we've talked about already, is looking solid. London is still very much in a developmental state. It's going to take a bit. I mean, conversely, everything that London puts up is going to be progress, right? They seem to have, they're an unknown a bit. They seem to have a very, very high ceiling, but it also seems like they're very far away from that ceiling.
I don't even see the ceiling.
It's not necessarily there. But all in all, it's not coming together for me for London. I'll give him one
you're trying
map.
To polish a turd, I think.
I sure am. I'll give him one map because if you can take a map against New York, you can take a map against Washington, and for no other reason than that, I'm giving it to Washington 3-1.
They certainly have the ability to make a game of. The way that's going to happen is if Babel continues to play the May very well, which I thought he was solid. I thought Bernard was an absolute standout on Diva, and then I thought he disappeared into the background of the map as soon as he switched heroes.
Right.
So I think there's ways they can maximize what they have. I think part of what they have that's working well does fit in the meta. I don't recall seeing enough from Glister to make me think this team really has much of a chance. I don't think JMac can stand toe-to-toe with Roar in this game and not be exposed a little bit. He's a little too raw. Whether he develops over the year or not, I don't know. I just don't think he has it right now.
Right.
You're correct to say you can take a map against New York. You can take a map against anybody. I think New York was just sloppy, though. I'll take Washington here in the 3-0. They didn't really look to have much of that sloppiness to them. I didn't think. I mean, they did, fall to Philly. So they're certainly beatable, but I expect them to take some momentum away, right? The matches happen in the right order. For the Washington Justice. They lost and then they rolled Houston. And so I think they carry that momentum from the match against Houston into the home arena and get the win there. Although I did have them losing to Paris, so I guess that would kill the momentum already. I don't know.
It'll be close.
I'm just talking over here, but yeah, I don't think these are teams.
Hey, I'm talking here.
Same class, yeah. So 3-0.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to agree. Even with a 3-0, I'm giving him the pity one. All right, let's move on, and we'll talk about a pair of Houston games. We'll start by talking about Houston versus Bottom. Wow, that was definitely a Freudian slip that made a lot of sense. Houston versus Boston. The battle for the bottom, or the battle for the cellar right now, as it's being called. I do think it's going to be close, though. And my prediction here rides entirely on the amount of Linkser we see.
Yeah.
Is Linkser going to actually show up? And I mean, literally, not is he going to play well. Is he going to play at all? If he's not, if we don't see Linkser this week, Death, I start to question the whole thing. Like the sweater starts to get unraveled for me. If we're not seeing Linkser here, so I think
if he can't hit the stage, this is back to a team with massive holes in their hero pool that they don't have a Widow, they scan specialist anymore. What even are they? I'm totally with you there.
Yeah.
I think without Linkser, this is a crapshoot. For
Crap
what it's
is
worth,
definitely the right word for that.
For what it's worth, not all the numbers on Blase look terrible. Like he's floating around number 10 in damage per 10. Maybe from his perspective, he just wasn't getting peeling. I really don't know. Things obviously need to come together for both of these teams.
Yeah.
This is one where in a couple weeks, I'd like to think Houston would have this one because I just think they have more room to grow than Boston does. But we're playing it now, and it's going to be very important for Houston to their schedule is backloaded, right?
Right.
So if they're going to get better over the course of the year, they need to really good by the end of the year, which means they're going to need to level up fast if they want to be in the playoff contention, because they've got to get these wins here, these Bostons, these Londons that are going to be coming up over the next couple of weeks. They're very, very important to the success of Houston. So, yeah, I'm gonna go Houston 3-2. If, like I said, without Linkser, we're flipping a coin. If Linkser plays, it's 3-1 Houston. Maybe I really think it makes that much of a difference. I'm sorry, I should say if Dante Linkser play, I think it would be like 3-1. I think that would be more than enough to level up Houston over Boston. But current state, it's a coin flip, which means we've got to flip it.
Yeah, I've got Boston 3-2, by the way.
Yeah, we're pretty sure it's weighted for tails. Neither of us actually likes Boston, so Houston's definitely tails here. And it is tails again, so it might be weighted. Who knows?
Might need to find a new coin, but that's okay.
Might need to, but I think we're going to use it again here.
Yeah, we sure are
today. So more tests to come.
Yeah. I do agree. The one last thing I'll say about Houston, because I don't think we're going to have much to say about this next Houston matchup, but is that I agree with you entirely that Houston does have a lot of room to work and grow, because obviously the ability of the filthy traitor Mecco is unquestioned. Very good player, very disloyal and awful player from a team perspective, but from an actual in the game perspective, very, very good. However,
I gotta say, getting you to talk about Mecco makes me feel like so it's very therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
Anyways, go on.
Filthy scum trader. But a lot of, we talked about this with New York in the past, very, very synergy based. And we know that Mecco has not been with the team the entire offseason for scrims. He came relatively late in the process over into the scrims. So some of the communication, not even just like talking to the players, just like getting used to playing with them, is still happening. So they are going to grow naturally throughout the season in that regard. So yeah, again, I do agree, if this is a couple weeks out, if Houston kind of figures out that Linkser Dante is the right thing, and then also at the same time Mecco's getting more integrated with the team, getting used to playing, getting comms down, etc., I think they're going to be in a much better spot. But even if all that happened right now, they are going to be playing against the New York Excelsior, and no additional commentary necessary. Easiest 5-0 of my entire life for New York.
Yeah, I just don't know how I can possibly think New York's going to lose. Like, even the pieces with Houston, I was very comfortable with. Like, the second match last week was probably Muma's worst stage performance ever. So it's very, very difficult to pick New York to lose. So I'm not going to. I'm going to pick Houston in this game. I'm going to pick them to lose 0-3. And that way I'm not picking New York to win. I'm not picking New York to lose. I'm only picking Houston to lose here 3-0.
Fair.
That's very, very important that that gets out there to me.
Let the record stand that Houston will lose 3-0, although I have them losing 5-0, by the way.
But I don't predict New York to win. That's not my prediction.
That's okay. I have enough wins for I have extra unpossible wins for New York. They're going to win 5-0.
Yeah. I have the exact right number to make me happy with the outcome of this match, no matter what.
Okay. Let's continue the conversation about New York and move the talk here to Philly. I do think that this will be New York's first real test. For what it's worth, this will also be Philly's first test. There's also low-key a bit of a... I don't know if they'll talk about it as a rivalry, but I view it as a rivalry, New York versus Philly. Philly was, I believe... No, I guess London beat them in Season 1. Philly might actually be the first team that beat New York in Season 1. I don't remember. They certainly beat them at a pivotal moment. I think they were the only team that beat them in the regular stage for.
Did they knock them out in the playoffs?
They did.
Were they the team that did it? Okay,
they did.
That to me is the thing that can actually make it a rivalry.
Other thing. Throughout the year,
I want to see some like chirping back and forth. To me, to call it a rivalry, I want to see some chirping. So even though like Boston, New York might not be the heated, well-contested rivalry we want it to be. I don't know, it's a bigger rivalry to me because there's actually some feeling behind it. And I don't feel that from this, but at least amongst the players, I think it exists, right? I think New York feels that Philly was in their spot in the grand finals in that first year. And
I know I do.
I think there's something to that from the player side of things, and I guess that's really all we need to see it play out some. I want to see. I'll make my final decision when I see the crowd reaction in Philly to New York walking out. We're not getting that this week because it's in Washington, but like I either direction, right? Show me the crowd reaction is worse or different for these teams than they are for the other ones, and that's when I think we'll really see what the rivalries are. But nonetheless, it exists in some state here. I want to know what New York's going to do with their roster, and I didn't do enough switching to really make it a big giant question mark. To me, I'm flipping my whole opinion about who is maybe the should be benched and brought in. I almost think Who Are You might need to come out, and I want to see what Libero can do on the May, because when I really got into the New York VOD review, I was not super impressed with Who Are You's May. Not a hero he's known for, so I don't think it's a damning thing for him not to be their best May player. But I wonder if maybe, okay, let's get the new guys some play time while we're going against London and Boston. And then we'll roll out Libero in week 2, in our second bout of games or set of games. I'm very curious to see if that's what happens this time around. So I'm going to be watching that. And then obviously the Nene versus SBB conversation is one we've already had. On Philly's side, I don't expect Fury to come out since he didn't, but I don't recall Poco really standing on his head. He wasn't a problem from anything I saw either. But
he was pretty all right.
Sato versus Mano is to me the battle here. The winner of that positional battle, that 1v1 is probably going to make the decision here. I think it's going to be really, really close. But one good weekend doesn't make me start betting on Sato. I'd still be very net positive if I bet against him every single week. I'm going to continue to just believe in New York until we see something to make me think there's a paradigm shift and they've fallen or somebody's jumped up above them. So give me New York 3-2. I'll say it's pretty closely contested. Probably more Philly fans in the house in Washington than New York, so maybe they get a little boost there.
I don't know. I think it's kind of close.
It's probably far enough and close enough at the same time that they both get a little bit of traveling fan base.
They probably get a bit of both. I don't imagine it's going to be too much of either.
Certainly shouldn't make a large impact on the arena.
I'm certainly not factoring in crowd reaction into this one at all.
5-0?
I will lock it up. I will say I'm not giving a 5-0, which I think speaks volumes here. I've got New York 3-1. All the things that you said are definitely on board. I don't even know if New York is necessarily sold in their lineup yet. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. This is going to be their first real test. And as much as I want New York to just easy stomp, easy clap win this, when Carpe's on the stage, it is literally always winnable. The meme lives on for a reason. Carpe will always be a scary force to be reckoned with. I'm not going to be able to sit easy knowing that he's on the stage at any point. We've seen almost every array of outcomes happen in New York versus Philly, except for a Philly stomp. I don't think we've seen that. Philly stomping New York, that is. I am going to pick New York 3-1 here and be cautiously optimistic with New York. They still looked good. I don't have any reason to necessarily think that they're bad or not. It's just with Carpe on the stage, literally always winnable.
I hope it's just SBB Libero and like Philly spent the whole week going like, we're going to attack Who Are You? Right. Soft, we can get it, and then it's just, oh, he's not there, and the May plays perfect, and now your whole plan's shot.
God, that would be awesome.
There might be a decent chance of that.
Yeah.
And if New York did that and recognized week one,
Just
hey,
complete five-headed it.
right, like I'm going to be super, super impressed with the new coaching staff and might give you a little bit less of a hard time this year if that happens.
40 chess would definitely be impressive. Okay, let's move on and talk about our last match of the week. This is the second Philly match. This is going to be against the Toronto Defiant. Now, Toronto has the smallest sample size, right? They only played. No, did they play twice? No, they played once. They played once. They played against Paris last week. I ended up getting the win last week. First match of the season against Paris. This one I do think is going to be pretty close. Philly, I mean, if Philly beats New York, all bets are off. And I'm probably very high on Philly, even though I will be hating them. I'm probably very high on Philly. I'm actually very, very anti-Philly right now because they're playing both of my teams. So I hope the worst for them. But again, Carpe on the field, it is tough for me to say that they're going to get rolled if he's able to play a DPS role. Toronto has looked good. They look solid. The new roster is looking good. I'm not sold on them yet. Very small sample size versus a team that is, I think, maybe middle to maybe upper middle of the pack in Paris. Win the games that you're supposed to, but let's see where you stand. I do have Toronto 3-2 here. I could see a wide variety of outcomes from this one. I could see a stomp in either direction. I can see it flipped close. As it stands, I'm giving Toronto the 3-2 victory here.
Yeah, I mean, overall, over the first 2 weeks, Toronto bumped up my power rankings a little bit, and I don't think I've on Philly yet. It was always consistency that they needed to solve, not the ability to spike a week. If what they put out last week is the new Philadelphia, they're going to win, and it's probably going to be not super one-sided, but it's going to be decisive.
Yeah.
If they just maintain that level of play going into this week, like I said, I'll buy into that when I see it. And I did move Toronto up a little bit, but I didn't pass them in Philly. So I'm going to go Philly with a 3-2 score here. I think it's very, very up for grabs. I love the way Toronto's able to put their own spin on it. We saw some other people try some dive stuff, but nobody like committed to it and did it on defense. And so when I look at what Fefe's been able to do with this team, I like the way he's coached them and got them playing their own style, and it's working at least so far. So you have to expect the team's going to gel better as they get a little more used to one another. Just they're doing what they find. I don't know. I just love that about a team, and especially in a meta like this where it seems very open and possible. Teams that are willing to try that do get a bit of a boost for me, as long as it goes better than it did for Houston.
Right.
I think there's something positive to be said for that. And listen, I'm high on Paris. They beat Paris in their first game. So if I'm moving up both of those teams, then I've got to bring Toronto pretty close to the Philadelphia Fusion. So this is, to me, a big placement game. Either we were too conservative in our estimates of Toronto if they get the win here, or maybe we were pretty close to right by having a middle of the pack. I don't know. Could easily go either direction without it being a home game. Maybe Philly's mentally boomed from New York to start the weekend. You really just won't know until we get there. But the way things stand right now, I think this is close to a dead heat, but Philly favored off the back of, you have to wonder if this is new Sato, if they fixed him, or if the supports are better for him, or they change their philosophy to support him better. 100% of the time so far this year, Sato's looked pretty good, so they get a small edge, but I'm still not sold on any of it. So I think you have to treat this one as very, very close. But I do think most people are going to be wildly in the Philly camp, which to me makes it like a pick 'em flip opportunity.
Seems like a big flip. Speaking of flips, let's bust out that coin one last time.
Flip Philadelphia.
Definitely tails for Toronto.
Tails for Toronto, guaranteed. All right, new coin next week. It's
All
tails.
right, it's tails again. Tails never fails.
We used
for
it
Toronto.
before. I don't remember. I remember thinking weighted. But,
maybe your flips
we'll find,
are weighted across all coins.
It could be. We'll bare minimum find a regular coin for next week and see if we can get a differing result.
Maybe I'll flip. We'll see. We'll see. But that is going to be it for this week, guys. Should be a nice one. It's a longer week than last week, which is nice. More matches is nice. Soon we'll be getting into the multiple homestands. Actually, we had multiple homestands the first
week 6 and 7. We're going to be drowning in it.
We're going to be drowning in it, which will be great. But this seems like a good clip, I think, for a week with the new format. So let us know what you guys thought, and we'll see you guys next week. Make sure you're checking us out everywhere. YouTube, Twitter, all that good stuff with High Noon Podcast. Definitely make sure you check out the YouTube, as DB over here is pumping out more awesome content on YouTube. YouTube.com/High Noon Podcast, I think, gets you there. Or if you just search High Noon Podcast on YouTube, it will definitely get you there. At High Noon Podcast on Twitter. Patreon.com/High Noon Podcast as well. And we're doing the live podcasts Monday at 7 Eastern, twitch.tv/High Noon Podcast. And DB is also taking the mantle of the podcast to do some live VOD reviews and taking a look at some of the VODs there. So make sure
viewer games are up. You might see me after ATP tomorrow.
Ooh. Yes. Let us see that. But, guys, that is going to be it for this week for Deathblow. I'm Lovins. And remember, it's High Noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. Threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
All right, I need everyone to collectively boo Philly this week because they're playing New York and Toronto. So on 3, boo. 1, 2, 3, boo.